Mist drifts across the Ossipee, the same air that once carried the footsteps of a man named Francis Small. He was my seventh great-grandfather, and his story begins nearly 4 centuries ago, a tale of courage, loss, and endurance that would shape the very land beneath our feet. Hi, I'm John Small, author of The Small Family Legacy. In this short video, I'd like to talk about my ancestor, Francis Small. He was the largest landowner of Colonial, Maine, and this goes back nearly 4 centuries. In 1632, Edward Small left Devonshire, England, with his young son Francis, just 7 years old. They crossed the Atlantic seeking a new beginning, and by the mid-1630s, they had joined the early English settlers along the Piscataqua River, what would one day become southern Maine and New Hampshire. It was a wild and uncertain world, but for Edward and Francis, it marked the beginning of a legacy. By the 1650s, Francis Small had become a trader, farmer, and fisherman living among the early colonists and the Abenaki of southern Maine. He worked the rivers Kittery, Falmouth, until his path led inland to the valley of the Ossipee. But peace on the frontier was fragile. In 1663, after a trade dispute turned dangerous, Chief Wesumbe, known to settlers as Captain Sandy, warned Francis of a plot against his life. Francis fled into the forest, and from the shelter of the pines, he watched as his home and trading post burned with the dawn's light. The Ossipee Purchase is first associated with 1663. The surviving deed, dated November 28, 1668, records Chief Wesumbe granting Francis Small, quote, 20 miles square, end quote, between the Great and Little Ossipee Rivers in exchange for blankets, powder, musket balls, beads, and rum. On that document, the chief's mark appears, the sign of the turtle, a symbol of endurance and the earth itself. That same emblem still represents the Francis Small Heritage Trust today. The Ossipee Tract eventually formed parts of Cornish, Parsonsfield, Newfield, Limerick, Limington, and Shapleigh. When the deeds surfaced again in 1770, the heirs of Francis Small and of Major Nicholas Shapleigh divided the vast territory, a land that had already begun shaping the map of Maine. In the closing years of the 17th century, wars and hardship swept across the frontier. The land Francis had once tamed grew dangerous again, and Francis, now aging, began to turn his thoughts toward peace. Around 1700, weary of conflict, Francis Small left Maine and settled in Truro, Massachusetts, near his son Daniel. There, by the Atlantic winds of Cape Cod, he spent his remaining years in quiet reflection. He died around 1713, closing a life that had spanned nearly 90 years of New England's earliest history. 4 centuries later, his story still breathes through these rivers and forests, through the lightkeepers and farmers who followed, and through the words and pages that preserve his name. The Small Family Legacy was written to keep those memories alive, to remind us that history is not only what was, but what still lives within us. Thank you for watching. If you would like to explore more about Francis Small and the Small family and the early settlers of New England, especially Cape Cod, check out my book, The Small Family Legacy. It's available on Amazon, and I will have the link below. I will also have more videos coming soon about some of the other members of the Small family and my ancestry, and we'll look at lighthouses and coastal areas of Cape Cod, primarily Truro and Provincetown area. Stay tuned. Thanks again for watching.